Thank you for joining us for another episode of That Solo Life, the podcast for PR pros and marketers who work for themselves. People like me, Michelle Kane with Voice Matters, and my wonderful co-host Karen Swim of Solo PR Pro. Hey Karen, how are you today?
Hey, Michelle, a little sneezy, but good, and really looking forward to some spring.
Oh, for real, for real. 'Tis the season for sneezing. I know I've felt even with the slight weather changes, I'm like,
Yeah,
don't you creep up in there, snifflies. No, 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 not
we don't
yet.
want any of that. We've got
No.
enough going on for all of us this year that our plates are pretty full. So, no
Seriously.
sickness, no allergies. Let's just lean into the good times that we
Can manage to
still
muster.
have. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Oh, yes, let the gallows humor reign here. That's so life. Well, what we do want to talk about today is wordplay. Wordplay can be fun. It's fun
Yes.
in our line of work to be clever with words, to have our messaging be received by the desired audience in fun and playful ways. And we're going to talk about some of those examples that we've seen of late. But then there's
Yeah.
also like you can't call a thing another thing. That's not how any of this works. As if you've been alive on the planet, you know that apparently certain bodies of water have been renamed by certain people in certain places, and even steaks. Apparently, Karen, you saw something a bulletin coming out of Texas.
I did. Yeah. It's really an interesting time because as PR pros, we love language, right?
Yeah,
And we love wordplay. We love metaphors. I mean, we live for that stuff. Who among us has not taken lines of a favorite poem and had a play on them, or
yeah,
from song lyrics and pop culture? I mean, we love this stuff. It's great. And it can definitely work, and it brings a little lightness, a little humor, and then strategically a little familiarity to, when you the
yes,
right wordplay to the right audience. But
yes,
today
yes,
wordplay kind of falls into what we know as wordplay, to the ridiculous, that you question the strategy to mean, unfortunately, where words are being used as weapons,
yeah,
and to purposely be divisive of audiences.
yeah.
And so it's just interesting to see wordplay done well, wordplay done with an evil motive, and wordplay that just doesn't make sense.
Yes. And yes, there is a Venn diagram and all of that, right? I mean, yes, now we're naming things on the map, and
Yeah.
you see the AP getting punished for not playing along with renaming
Yeah. I mean,
things.
we don't do the tough stuff. And so this is not I don't even want to preface it, but
No,
when you take something, and this has happened in the history of of life, where
right.
places on the map have been renamed, but we
Yes.
renamed it. The United States decided that we're no longer calling the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of Mexico because we have a vendetta against Mexico. We're calling it the Gulf of America. And again, as we think about this as communicators, we really have to think,
Yeah,
what's the motive here and what's the strategy? Because
right.
there should be a strategy in our communication. Is the strategy to strengthen our unity within the United States? Is it strategic in that we're battling for, but it's an ocean.
Right.
So
It's yeah.
you
I,
wonder, like,
wait,
okay.
yeah.
And I mean,
We're
when you
adjacent to
change the
it.
name, like changing the name of a national monument, that it's no small thing. So we have to think about
No.
the difference between wordplay, or saying something as a point of pride, or saying something as a jab, even
Right.
to someone that we have a discrepancy or a disagreement with. And I think way back to when George R. Bush was not R. Bush, George Bush
There's
one.
a
Um, when he
HW.
was in office, and we had a little, dust up with friends, and he said, from now on,
Oh,
French fries will be
the
American
freedom
fries,
fries.
the freedom fries.
Yeah,
I mean,
the freedom
okay, we
fries.
we understood that in that moment. that moment, it, it was just like, okay, that's kind of silly. But again, we weren't really renaming the dish. But we have to think about that. Like, wordplay is one thing. Renaming something takes a lot of work. Like, think about renaming a place on the map.
Yeah.
And we've done this to right wrongs to the indigenous people, but it requires a lot of updating in a lot of different places. And so I think that it should matter.
Yeah. And, right away I'm thinking, think of all the travel brochures and websites that would need to be updated. Think of the cost of doing something like this for whatever reason, because you have a beef. It's really what it's about, right? It's because there's a beef. And I also point to the notion that people don't necessarily take to such changes in such a way. I don't know about you, but here in the Philly region, we have, sadly, it's now the Macy's that's going to close in Center City. But that store started out as Wanamaker's, and it became several others. Many of us still call it Wanamaker's. It's like, we don't change our vernacular just because someone else, even if it's a legitimate name change, we're just like, oh yeah, yeah, right.
You're right.
We'll
It's
go to the
like
Wanamaker building. Yeah. I know where you mean.
Habits die really
Yeah.
hard. I mean, and we've seen this. We've seen other countries be renamed, and it made sense to rename it. But if you grew up in, in an era where that was the name, it's so fully ingrained in you that it is really hard to make that changeover. So that's a great point too, is not only strategically communicating with your audience, having a strategic purpose for it, but really understanding that the adoption of the new thing that you're calling it will take time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what is how'd that song go? Istanbul, not Constantinople.
Yeah.
But again, that was a major sea change in power. But or even like when I've spoken to clients about wanting to, when we have branding conversations and things, and just cautioning them to really be thoughtful about it, because when you need to blow your nose, what do you call it? Do you grab a facial tissue? No, you grab a Kleenex, even if it's the word puffs on the box. So, we become so ingrained in things. So really, if you're going to be a brand or a company thinking of doing such a thing, you really need to be thoughtful about it and wonder, is this going to distract from my ultimate desired action by our customers? Or is it going to help? Count the cost. If you're really going to go through something that is expensive to do, is it going to move the needle on your bottom line in a positive way? Is it really worth it? So, and if you are introducing something, let's say new, then of course you're going to be thoughtful about it and invest wisely in your next steps. But we also had, you noticed some fun examples of wordplay recently.
There's some cool stuff. Like, this is, kudos to the advertisers and the PR people, the communications people behind these, because these were pretty clever. So one is the Nike ad. So for years, their slogan, just do it. But they have this new ad that is yesterday you said tomorrow. So it's another play
I did
your tagline, but it's great. And it's one that I probably need to post on my wall, because hello, procrastinators of the world. And even if you're not a procrastinator, I don't think I necessarily am, but there are things, like all of us, that I do procrastinate about. That's a good one to kind of get you moving and motivated. Like, yesterday you said tomorrow. Well, tomorrow's now. So what you gonna do, lady? I love that. I thought that was really good. And then there's another ad from Apple, and this was up in Vegas, and it says, what happens on Apple stays on Apple, or what happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone. And being in Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That was a nice play.
Yeah.
And a familiar slogan. I think what both of those do really well is that it's a nod to history. So it's not just like this full on, like, it sits alone in isolation, but it's a nod to something that is a major reference that a lot of their audience remembers and understands, and it's adding a new twist to it,
Yeah.
which is
Love
why I
it.
think it's so successful, which is something I think as communicators and the brands that we represent, we can think about that when we're doing wordplay. Does it nod to something that is going to strike that chord of familiarity with our audience? Because we can nod to esoteric things or super
Yeah.
archaic things that not everyone will know. And if that's your audience, that's okay.
Yeah.
But when it brings that familiar and then it adds like a fresh take, I think that's my favorite.
I love it. I love it. And it really it pulls people together in community, which is what we need now more than ever, right? It
We do.
definitely gives you that recognition, and you feel like you're part of something bigger that's fun and positive, which is
Yeah.
so nice and so needed these days. And sorry, Texas, I'm not going to call it a Texas strip steak. And quite frankly, I'm a filet mignon girl. So
And I'm a vegan, so I'm not going to call it anything. But yeah, the lieutenant governor of Texas wants to rename, start to call it the Texas steak rather than the New York strip steak. And the reasoning is to really market Texas beef. I think that there's really fantastic ways to go about that. I mean, and to be honest, when you think of Texas, you think of cattle.
right.
Already
That's true.
like that.
Yeah.
We already own that market in my mind. And again, I'm not a meat eater at all, but when I think of Texas, I definitely think of cattle. The association is so strong.
Sure.
Think
Yeah.
New York when I
Right.
think of beef. And so I really do think that they could lean into a narrative that's already widely accepted and find a fresh take to promote
Exactly.
local if that were the goal. And I think a lot of people are. These days, I'm seeing this a lot this year of people really leaning into buy local, support local.
Yes.
We're seeing a lot
Absolutely.
of, support
Yeah.
American products and all those things too. So I just think he made it, the heart of the matter may have been in the right place. But again, I think something that we can always take a step back and ask our clients as well is, what's the strategic intention?
Yeah.
What's the personal motivation? Because
Right.
people drive decisions. Because I when you attempt something in a mean spirit, when it's just cause to poke at somebody else, those things can turn on you pretty quickly. I
Hmm.
mean, you may get some chuckles and but it doesn't put you in the best light. And it kind of, as you said, Michelle, it distracts from the ultimate goal. And I would think that the ultimate goal is, hey, you want to promote Texas beef. Okay, let's do that. Let's find a clever, fresh way to do that and not use this opportunity to take a dig. You don't need to rename something that has been named that since the 1800s
Yeah.
in order to promote something that is so ingrained and so interwoven with who you are as a state.
Right.
Yeah,
And I will say, I forget, was it in the 80s? Right away when you talked about that, playing in my head was the beef, it's what's for dinner commercial, which
yeah,
had such Western overtones. I certainly wasn't thinking of Broadway,
true,
but
true.
I think that was the beef, the cattle trade as a whole nationally that created that. But still, it definitely put you in that Texan state of mind.
For
So
sure.
I don't know. Hopefully he finds other more important things to work on, but oh
Yeah.
well. We're
I
not in
mean,
Texas, so
it's again, all of these are communication lessons that we
yes,
can,
exactly.
there are some key takeaways there for
Yeah.
us. But, I guess during these times, because it really has been an interesting year. And, as people have said, they've caught January, the longest year ever. And it really was. I want to encourage us as communicators to be kind. And it
Yes.
sounds so silly, but those two small words, if we can just take moments of silence and remind ourselves that operating from a place of kindness is always going to serve us well. And that is not only in dealing with the messages that we write for our publics, but dealing with our clients dealing with the media, all of the things that we have to deal with, dealing with servers in restaurant, be kind and
Yeah.
remember that we are all human beings. We're all fallible. We all have a bad day. Sometimes we say or do something that is offensive. It's not always intended. It's not towards you. I think that communicating from a place of kindness is just a beautiful way to start because it puts you in someone else's shoes and you are communicating for their best interest. And it's not self-serving. It's not coming from a ranty place. It's not coming from meanness. And I'm not saying that there aren't times that your own personal passions shouldn't come out, but it's
Right.
not in our work.
Right.
Not the personal passions that would lead you to divide rather than unite, because we have that dual role of being the protector of our publics and of our clients. So we should never forget that.
Yeah. No, I agree wholeheartedly. Kindness will always get you much farther. And if you just lead out of a mean, vindictive, destructive spirit, it's going to catch up with you eventually. And
Yeah,
it
I
really
think we're
doesn't serve anyone. Doesn't
we're
serve
seeing that in
anyone
this
well.
country right now, which is
Mm,
really unfortunate. Words should be used to invoke a response. Obviously, we want that. We want to motivate people. We want to inspire them. We want to engage them. I'm not sure. I mean, even if we were going to war, looking back in past history at those that did that very well and encouraging the troops and really sharing like passionate messages about why this is necessary, it still wasn't mean
it's
and it
positive.
wasn't
Right.
divisive. It was
Right.
unifying. But we're seeing words today that really their goal really is to divide. It's to divide
Uh-huh.
people into us and them in various categories. We could do 10 episodes on what's happening
Cross.
with
Oh yeah.
DEI and how that's being portrayed and some of the things that we're seeing play out in workplaces and in the communications community. But yeah, I think that we need to get back to and I think that communicators get this. So I believe that we can
Yeah.
lead the way and educate other
Oh,
people that
totally.
yeah.
Yeah. Don't discount our influence. Definitely need to hold the line on what is true and good and right. And at the end of the day, because as I always say, your credibility is all you have. And once that's
So
gone, it
true.
takes way too long to rebuild it. So hold the line out there, good people, good communicators. We know it can be daunting, especially, those of us working as solos, sitting here in our little silos. Reach out to each other. And you can always hit us up here at soloprpro.com. And if you found value in this, please do share it around. Give us a review. We would love that too. And until next time, thanks for listening to That Solo Life.